In 1960s East London, the Kray twins have risen as the ruling gangsters of the city, feared by everyone. Ron is impulsive and violent, while Reggie is a seasoned street fighter. One morning, Reggie steps out to offer tea to the officers monitoring him. He mocks Nipper for wasting time instead of catching actual criminals. Reggie walks over to his car and finds Ollie in the driver's seat instead of Frank. Ollie explains Frank didn't show up for work, so Reggie decides to check on him. Along the way, Reggie chats with the neighbors, who admire how much he seems to care. The police stay on his trail, and Nipper grows frustrated seeing locals gladly engage with a known gangster but avoid the authorities. At Frank's place, Reggie meets his sister, Frances, and flirts until their mother calls her inside. Eventually, Frank appears and gets in the car. On the ride, Reggie keeps questioning Frank about his sister. They later stop in an alley, and Reggie and Ollie slip away. Nipper halts the police car and tries to pursue them. No matter how hard he tries, Nipper can't keep up. Reggie and Ollie head to visit Ron, who's locked up in a psychiatric hospital after serving time for violent assault. Ron tells them a strange tale about controlling minds to make others share their food, and the pair act amused. Reggie is determined to get Ron out, so he sends someone to intimidate the psychiatrist handling Ron's case. The doctor becomes so scared just hearing Reggie's name that he convinces the parole board Ron is well enough for release. Afterward, the doctor warns Reggie that Ron is mentally unstable and gives him medication that must be taken twice daily to keep him stable. Later, Frances prepares for a date with Reggie despite her mother's objections. Reggie takes her to his club, saying he mixes celebrities and criminals because his guests enjoy the contrast. Their night gets cut short when Reggie's men pull him aside for urgent business. They reveal Jack has been skimming profits from the illegal goods he sells for Reggie. Surprisingly, Reggie lets it go if Jack returns the money and doesn't steal again. He even offers him a smoke before suddenly striking him and threatening to kill him if it happens again. Reggie goes back to Frances and tries to connect with her. She asks if he truly enjoys the gangster life, and he insists he's only a club owner. He delivers a witty monologue about how broken the world is, and Frances responds by kissing him. A few weeks pass, and Reggie takes Frances to the woods to meet Ron, who now lives in a trailer. Frances sees another man leaving, and Ron casually mentions he's into men, oversharing about his preferences. He also brags that he and Reggie will soon control the entire city. The Krays are in conflict with South London's infamous torture gang, led by brothers Eddie and Charlie Richardson. This gang is known for hanging victims upside down and torturing them until they spill secrets. They're furious after finding one of Reggie's men operating on their territory, so they retaliate by sending a car to hit Reggie. In response, Reggie sends an even larger car to plow into the restaurant where the Richardsons are dining. Wanting to end the conflict, the Richardsons send George to propose a truce. But George insults Ron, who immediately pulls a gun, prompting Reggie to dismiss him. An hour later, the twins arrive at the arranged pub meeting, only to discover they've been set up and are surrounded. Ron begins shouting while keeping his hands in his coat pockets, acting like he's armed and calling for shootout. His wild expression and supposed weapons intimidate the enemies enough to let him walk away. Meanwhile, Reggie calmly sips beer. Once Ron is gone, he verbally attacks the rival gang and reveals brass knuckles. Ron returns wielding 2 hammers and ambushes a man from behind. A brutal fight breaks out. Though outnumbered, the Krays fight like beasts. They show no mercy, with Ron even biting someone's face. The twins win handily, and as Ron keeps hitting unconscious bodies, Reggie casually finishes his beer. On World Cup final day, police catch Charlie at the gang's base and arrest him. He receives 25 years for assault, fraud, and extortion. With the Richardsons out of the way, the Krays now have no opposition in London. They bring on a lawyer, Leslie, to create a legal front for their underground dealings. Leslie uses aggressive legal tactics to push the local casino owner into selling the business to the twins. Reggie finds Leslie's methods impressive and sees his value, but Ron doesn't trust him. He dislikes Leslie's smooth talking and believes a real gangster should be direct and intimidating. Ron also resents how Leslie uses we, as if he's part of the Krays. Eventually, Leslie informs them the American Mafia is interested in working together. Ron wants no part in it, but Reggie tells Leslie to schedule a meeting. Tension fills the room when they meet. Reggie remains skeptical at first, but the Americans come prepared, with one case full of cash and another with bearer bonds. They propose a deal splitting profits 60-40. Reggie counters with 50-50, and they agree. They raise a glass to seal the partnership. Ron, as usual, brings up his personal life inappropriately. Surprisingly, the Americans just laugh and call him bold for being so open. As time passes, the casino's popularity continues to soar, reinforcing Reggie's image as a respectable entrepreneur, though he's still running shady operations behind the scenes. Like his pub, The casino draws a mix of high-profile celebrities and underworld figures, appealing to a daring and curious crowd. Reggie continues his relationship with Francis, while Ron becomes increasingly erratic. He even brings a donkey into the casino. The medication helps manage Ron's behavior, but it's far from a real cure. As the year comes to a close, Reggie must return to prison to serve the remainder of a sentence that had been delayed. The moment he enters the facility, the guards beat him savagely before locking him up. Other inmates catch a glimpse of him and shout out words of support. But Reggie is in agony, and once in his cell, he pleads for mercy. When a guard brings him water, Reggie pulls a stunt. He's managed to slip his cuffs. He latches the guard to the cell bars, grabs his baton, and beats him while the other inmates cheer him on. Days later, Ron tells Francis that he saw Reggie, who sends his love but doesn't want her visiting. Ron then meets with Leslie, demanding money for absurd plans. Ever since Reggie went to jail, Ron seems to be spiraling. He and Leslie argue constantly. Eventually, Ron loses his temper and hurls Leslie's paperwork off the desk. He's fed up with being a businessman. He wants to live like a gangster, taking what he needs at will. Leslie, exhausted, agrees to talk to the bank, but reminds Ron that he's not intimidated. Meanwhile, Francis ignores Reggie's request and visits him in prison. He's upset, not wanting her to see him in such a state. She wants to report the abuse by the guards, so Reggie has to explain how deep the corruption goes. Francis begs him to leave the criminal world behind, but he says it's not that easy. At the club, Ron storms the stage during a show, clumsily playing an instrument before grabbing the mic to insult the wealthy patrons and tell vulgar jokes. Only Teddy, his assistant, laughs. Leslie watches, deeply concerned about what this could lead to. Eventually, Reggie is freed and immediately heads to see Francis. He climbs up to her window and proposes, offering her a ring. Francis agrees on one condition. He must promise to change his ways. Reggie gives his word, swearing on his honor to go straight. The two head to the club, where Reggie is stunned to see it nearly deserted. Leslie informs him that Ron's antics have driven customers away and the tax bill due next week will finish them. Furious, Reggie confronts Ron, and an argument erupts. When Francis defends Reggie, Ron insults her. That's the last straw. Reggie hurls Ron onto a table, and the brothers start a vicious brawl, using whatever objects they can grab, drawing blood. Ron, hardened by his time in prison, manages to overpower Reggie, leaving him battered on the floor. Disgusted, Francis storms out. Ron, now crying, hugs Reggie and confesses that sometimes he doesn't feel like himself. The next day, Reggie goes after Francis and persuades her to give him another chance. Meanwhile, Nipper has shifted focus and begins trailing Ron, snapping pictures constantly. Ron starts rubbing elbows with politicians, inviting them to parties at his place where young men are hired to entertain the older guests. The police can't touch him without dragging powerful figures into the mess, so the higher-ups sweep everything under the rug, keeping Ron protected. Reggie shows Francis a club in the West End that he wants to buy as part of his clean image. The owner agrees to sell half, and Reggie plans to buy the rest later. Ron, scared of losing his bond with Reggie, sends Teddy to scare the owner off. Teddy wrecks the bar. The deal is canceled, and the owner reports it to the police. Now, both twins are charged with extortion. When Francis visits Reggie in jail, she makes it clear she'll only marry him if he's acquitted. Soon after, a photo of Ron with a high-ranking official appears in the paper. The government quickly covers it up, which includes securing a not guilty verdict and releasing the twins. That night, Reggie buys the entire club at a markdown. When Nipper enters to investigate, Reggie taunts him, saying that technically, Nipper works for him now due to the protection from the political elite. The twins take a picture with Nipper and send it to the police captain, who immediately calls off the investigation. Later, Reggie and Francis finally tie the knot. Her mother, disapproving, wears black like she's attending a funeral. Just before the ceremony, she tries to dissuade Francis one last time, but Francis won't listen. During the wedding, Ron notices that her mother isn't singing and calls her out in front of everyone. Despite Reggie's vow to change, his promise doesn't hold for long. Just 2 weeks into the marriage, he's back to his shady dealings. This keeps him away from home often, and Francis is fed up and going to bed alone. She soon realizes her husband truly enjoys the gangster lifestyle. Francis tries to connect with Ron and his parents, but they constantly criticize her, believing she isn't worthy of Reggie. To make things worse, Nipper begins trailing her. Overwhelmed, Francis starts abusing medication and becomes dependent on it. When Jack messes up again, Reggie relishes the chance to beat him down. He also buys Francis a car to please her, but still refuses when she asks him to spend time together. One afternoon at the pub, Leslie tells Reggie he should start thinking about his future and might consider going straight. Ron overhears and, enraged, hits Leslie with a bottle and throws several glasses before the others rush the lawyer to the hospital. Reggie lashes out at Ron and realizes his brother has stopped taking his medication, which might explain his increasingly erratic behavior. Not long after, the American gangster has a private word with Reggie, urging him to handle Ron. It's risky being seen with politicians while Ron remains unpredictable. Reggie, however, won't abandon his brother. When he returns home, he doesn't even greet Francis. Meanwhile, George tries to operate independently now that the torture gang has dissolved. George steps into the Craze's territory and assaults the manager of a key warehouse. The following day, the warehouse owner approaches Ron for protection. Ron launches into a rant about incompetence and agrees to take out George, if the price is right. That night, Ron enters a bar and shoots George in the head in full view of the crowd. Later, Reggie wants to yell at Ron for the murder, but holds back so their mother doesn't hear. He quietly tells Teddy to dispose of the clothes and gun Ron used at the pub, and instructs Albee to track down any witnesses to see if they've spoken to the police. Before leaving, Reggie sets the medicine bottle down and reminds Ron to take it. The next day, Francis begs Reggie to let Ron be arrested, but he refuses. Reggie is also disheartened to discover that Francis has become an addict. Over at Scotland Yard, Nipper finally gets the green light to launch an official investigation into the Craze, using George's murder as a starting point. Ron is placed in a lineup, but none of the witnesses identify him. They're too afraid. Francis grows increasingly miserable as gang members begin frequenting her home. Strangers on the street ignore her whenever she's with Reggie. He even admits to intimidating the witnesses to keep them silent. One rainy afternoon, Francis rushes outside to secure her car, but struggles to close it. Rather than help, Reggie mocks her, pointing out that the car only exists because of his criminal work. He shakes the car and hurls insults, prompting Francis to slap him before heading back inside. Furious, Reggie follows and violently throws her around the room before forcing himself on her and assaulting her. The following morning, Francis finally leaves for good. Ron sees her leaving and helps carry her bags, talking to her as they walk. He's glad she's going, though he disapproves of Reggie's violence, saying their parents didn't raise them that way. Francis kisses him on the cheek in thanks, and Ron admits he's always liked her. Weeks later, Reggie tries to visit Francis, but Frank doesn't want to let him in. As they argue, Francis appears and agrees to listen. Reggie pleads with her to return and promises he's changed. But Francis doesn't believe him and heads back into the house with her family. Later on, Francis concludes she'll never escape this life and takes a fatal dose of pills. Frank discovers her body and calls Reggie, who returns to say goodbye and gently slips her wedding ring back on her finger. At the funeral, Francis's mother blames Reggie for her daughter's death. One evening at the club, Ron hires Jack to kill Leslie. Jack shows up at Leslie's house, but hesitates when a lawyer answers the door. Leslie fights back, and in the scuffle, he shoots Jack in the leg. Jack manages to escape, and Leslie fires after him, but Jack flees in his car. The next morning, Nipper visits Leslie in the hospital and persuades him to talk by guaranteeing protection for his family. Not long after, Reggie learns from his sources that Leslie gave Nipper everything, even paperwork. Those who witnessed George's murder are now under witness protection and willing to speak. That night, Ron throws a party and Reggie attends, burning with revenge. When Jack arrives, Reggie explodes, blaming him for wrecking their business. Jack turns to Ron for help, but Ron doesn't intervene. Jack then throws an insult about Francis. Reggie pulls out a gun and tries to shoot him, but it's empty. As Jack makes a run for it, Reggie grabs a knife and stabs him repeatedly until he collapses and dies in front of everyone. Ron demands to know why he did it. Reggie responds that he killed Jack because he couldn't bring himself to kill his own brother, no matter how badly he wanted to. Then he places the knife in Ron's pocket and walks out. Albee follows to confront him, but Reggie punches him and walks off. Thanks to the many witnesses at the party, the police finally have solid grounds to arrest the twins, disregarding their political influence. This is based on the true story of the Cray twins. Reggie spent 33 years behind bars and was released on compassionate grounds 2 weeks before his death from cancer in 2000, at age 66. Ron, declared insane, was sent back to a psychiatric hospital, where he died of a heart attack in 1995 at age 61.